Greeting is the Queen. You're our guest. We welcome you, sir.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Ken. I think most of you know this one. They say if you're a little nervous, just look out in the audience and think about them being all naked.
That's right up to your chin.
And did that once, looked up, and they were. And wasn't nervous anymore. Scared to death. So, all right, sorry. Gotta hold it up to my chin like my beer? Yeah. All right, well, thank you. Look, folks, I'm just one guy. I'm here to represent a lot of good guys that died, and those 7 others who are still alive. From, as you know, the Imjin River fight, as it were. But believe me, I'm not going to be talking about the whole Korean War, just this one thing, how I got there, and so forth. But Ken asked me to talk a little bit about my childhood. I lived through the Blitz in England, and thought maybe that might be interesting to hear. Anybody else here that was in England during the Blitz?
After, but I know about it.
Just one?
No, I know all about it.
Oh, you know all about it?
Yeah.
Well, good. Then you can help me out if we get in trouble. Funny thing happened when I was born. We went to a well baby clinic in Manchester. I was born in a place called Fallowfield, and right next to it is a place called Chorlton. Funnily enough, my wife-to-be went to the same well baby clinic, very possibly at the same time as me, because she was born 4 days after me, and our parents said we certainly were there together. So I guess it, what's it say, what comes around goes around? Yeah, it took a long while, but I made it back up. And I do believe I heard her screaming at that time. We moved from Manchester to Birmingham, if you want to put that up there, to a small pub called the Gothic. It was, it's on the National Register now. I lived there for several years. We had to leave there because when war broke out, my dad was called up. He went up and had an exam. They said you're about blind as a bat, so they made him an ambulance driver. That's true. So anyway, as I said, I want to talk to you about the war. We had to leave the Gothic because he couldn't stay with us anymore. He was stationed close by. But one of the things, and probably you mothers out there will think about this, you want to go to that, that's what happened to us. You didn't have much choice. Think about this now. You take your kids to a railroad station. They've got a little tag on them with their name, and hopefully in their little suitcase they've got some self-addressed envelopes that when they get where they're going, they'll send you a notice of where they are. Now those kids are gone, and many of them never came back. And some of them that did come back, there was nobody to come back to. So just digest that a little bit about evacuations. It was something that was done by the Allies, both the Germans and the English, all of them. They lost a whole generation of people in World War I, and they swore it was never going to happen again. All of these marriageable age kids, 2.5 million of them, got killed. So that's why the evacuations. There were some evacuated to Canada. That stopped when a ship was sunk that had 750 kids on it in the Atlantic. Some were sent to Australia, and obviously some of them never came back. They grew up there. And if I could get some of that water from over there, I would really appreciate it. Thank you. Well, anyway, I'd like to talk about what we did during the war. And basically, when we were kids, at sundown, we'd go in the shelter. And I think that's the inside of what they call an Anderson shelter. It was a hole dug in the ground, and it was sheet metal put in there, and then the dirt that they took out, they put over the top of it, and hopefully that would shield it, other than a direct hit. And that was so. We did that every night. We didn't decide when the bombers were coming over. We just went over and went in there for the night. So that happened for about from 1940 into 41. Problem we had was that the house next door to us took a direct hit. And I left for school the next morning, and my mother was sticking newspaper in the cracks in the wall, and she said it'd be all right. Well, when I got home, the bags were packed and we were moved. We lost our house, which wasn't our house, we rented anyway, but still. We were bummed out, and this is now an awful lot of that stuff in there that's not for, but it looks good anyway. But that's what the outside of one looks like, and by and large, they saved a lot of lives. I'm going to talk a little bit technical about the bomb defense. I think one of the things that happened in World War II that people don't think too much about has to do with barrage balloons. Now, barrage balloons were flown anywhere from 5,000 to 7,000 feet high, and the idea was any pilot that's got good sense is going to be up above them. Secondly, the anti-aircraft guns were timed to explode at various altitudes above the balloons, so that enemy aircraft coming through that flew above the balloons would have to go through this flak, and that was one of the things that hurt them really bad. And one of the other things that is very important is that the Junkers 87, better known as the Stuka, had gone all the way across Europe with nobody to stop it. They didn't have air defenses, they didn't have planes, so those dive bombers terrified people, worked real well. Now, some of you pilots out there know this, but anyway, a Stuka is a lousy airplane. You wouldn't want to fly in that stupid thing, it's too slow, but it would gain altitude coming across. When it got near the target, it would drop, almost a vertical drop. At about 8,000, 10,000 feet, it would go into a 45-degree angle. At that point, it would drop a bomb. Problem. They lost an awful lot of those coming over the channel because they were so slow. About 185 miles an hour. Spitfires were running 350. So they didn't have much fighter help. And then they couldn't use those Stukas. So they were stuck with the larger bombers. and the other ones were Heinkel 111s. Did anybody know about the Heinkel 111? Beautiful plane, slow, but major problem. The British lost about 1 to every 3 that they shot down. Big difference. When they shot a Heinkel down, they lost 5 men. When they shot a Spitfire down, they lost 1 man. And in addition to that, 50% of the Spitfires and the Hurricanes that were shot down, the pilots were recovered and came back to fight another day. Actually, Hermann Göring, anybody know that name? Was Hitler's best buddy. He was also his worst enemy. He convinced Hitler that he could beat any country out, and then all you had to do was walk in later. And he lost so many planes. They lost 365 in 1 week. It seemed like it was raining on them. Problem that they had was that their fighters had to go back home because they didn't have any gas. They could only just go so far. So coming out the other side, those things were sitting ducks. So they shot down a lot of those on the opposite side. So this kind of broke the back of what they call the Battle of Britain. Now they didn't stop them bombing. That kept on bombing. But it did make Hitler decide there wasn't any use coming across and invading across the channel. So those things that I'm talking about, the barrage balloons, the anti-aircraft, which by the way is my specialty, is guns. I don't know if you think about this, you fire one of those up there and at a certain height it explodes. Well, just like the fireworks you go to see every 4th of July, that's what it looks like. Except that stuff that comes out of there is bad. So basically that's how this went. Now, when I was a kid, after the bombing, we would go around looking for shrapnel. And this is stuff that rained in from the skies, and we kept it in boxes. Everybody kept a box of shrapnel. One of the prizes, if you could find it, were the fins off of a incendiary bomb. Now these incendiary bombs were basically magnesium, about 2-inch diameter and about 18 inches long. I promised the kids I'd tell you about this. And the point of the story I'm going to tell you is not readily apparent, but I'm going to tell you anyway. This incendiary bomb had come down. We found one. So, being 10 years old, I started chunking it at everything that I could think of. The gutter, the wall. Finally came to a church, of all places. And I threw it against the church and it blew up. So it's a beautiful, big, wide, I mean, you know what a flash looks like. Well, this is a big one. I was standing there minding my own business and watching the fire, and I got this hand on my shoulder, and this policeman said, "Did you do that?" And I said, "Yeah." He said, "Would you give me a name and address?" Yeah. So I gave him my name and address. He said, "You'll hear more about this." So I went home. Now, you got to know something else about my dad. When you sit down to eat, that's what you do. You don't talk. You eat. You speak when you're spoken to, but otherwise don't. So I'm bubbling over. I want to tell him. Guess what I did today? Yeah. He said, "Shut up, eat your dinner." I said, "I found an incendiary bomb." And he looked at me and he said, "I won't tell you again." I said, "I threw it against the church and it blew up." "That's enough." He ran me upstairs and he paddled my rear end up the stairs and he said, "Now get in bed, you're not going to eat." I hadn't been in bed but 3 minutes and there's a knock on the door. Dad goes to the door. "Mr. Warwick." "Yeah." "I want to talk to you about your son." And I could hear this. "Oh, certainly, yes. Oh, yeah, we'll take care of that." And he came up, and he paddled my rear end for throwing the dang bomb against the church. So, anyway, the next day I talked to my mother about it, and I said, "I'm going to talk to Dad about that, because that's not fair." She said, "I don't think you need to do that. It'd be better if you didn't." Well, I never did talk to him about it, but maybe I should have. But see, the whole point of the story is that things don't always come out to be fair. It's not the bomb. It's you tell the truth, and you get a good hiding for it, and then you tell a lie, and you get the same thing. No, that was wrong. So in talking about that, one of the problems we had was the rationing. It wasn't that bad. We had ration books, and we enjoyed our rations. And I think if you look over here, you'll see what one person's ration was. 1 egg, 2 ounces each. You can read that just as well as I can. It wasn't a lot. Sometimes if you had a larger family, it was good because you'd have more of that stuff. And you know, some kids definitely don't like some of that stuff, so they pass it on to the other kids. Everybody had a ration book. You go to the grocery store. You walk in the grocery store, and you throw your ration book down on the counter, and he'd look at it and say, "How many?" You say, "4. Stop. We're putting stuff on there. You take it. "Okay, you're done. You didn't pick anything. You had no pick." And then he'd say, "We got a few spuds. Do you want some potatoes? I can let you have 2 pounds of potatoes." "Yeah." "Got some extra eggs. Do you want a half a dozen eggs?" "Yeah." So it was like that. So that's the way rationing went. And then somebody asked me about gasoline. Well, there's no rationing of gasoline. There wasn't any. Private cars, you're not allowed to be on the road. Even if you were pushing them, I don't think you could be on the road. But anyway, that was it. So that's about the way my life went when I was a kid and went through the war. I got evacuated. I didn't like it. I was a big city kid. I guess I still am, but I couldn't stand this country stuff. To me, a cow was something about the same level as an elephant, a wild animal. They scare the hell out of me. And my playground was the city streets, the back alleys, and I can tell you this much: when I was a kid, there's no way you could have caught me. Whatever I did, you're not going to catch me. I'm going to find an alley and get out of there and run back to the houses. Some of the houses had outdoor toilets in the back. And, well, one of the things we used to like to do was run down the toilets with a piece of wood, and as you're going by, bum, 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 and then listen to people screaming and hollering. It's something we could do. We lived, as I said, in the Gothic, right close to an intersection of 2 railroads, the London Northeastern and the Midwestern Railroad, and they had cantilever beams, And I used to walk to the top there and sit on the top and just spit on the trains as they came by. You know, you can't think of anything better than that to do. Difficulty was when the one came by and there's a lot of smoke and steam, you can't see anything in front of your face. So I guess I might have been lucky. Start walking down that big old slope down there, and suddenly one train came by with all the smoke and everything, and couldn't even see your feet. So I waited until it went over. Apparently, I think I survived that little thing. So basically, I think that pretty well covers what I wanted to talk about the life in England during that time. As I said, when I was evacuated, I hate that place. In England, I never knew north from south, east or west, unless I knew where east and west was if I was turned the right direction. But I had to be turned in the right direction. And then the other thing was that in Birmingham, where I lived, if you wanted directions, you say, how can I get to the public library on so-and-so? Well, going down here to the Rose and Crown, go across the street, go on down there to the George and Dragon, and then go on past there to the Queen's Arms. And you look across the street, you'll be there at the library. I don't know what direction it was. Or I'd ask somebody, how do you get so-and-so? They say, you take bus number 42. Don't you know that? No. I don't know where bus 42 went, except it went where I wanted to go. So with that, I went to Texas, and it was all different. So that's about all of the England thing, and after we move along to the next.
We're going to do a 10-minute video talking a little bit about the experience that Ted experienced, and then he'll come back up and talk to an author who mentioned, it's forgotten. They talk about the forgotten war, but if you look at Korea, I got a niece-in-law who's a doctor in the Air Force, and she's from South Korea. And I don't think the people in South Korea forgot this, because if not, they'd be living like the people in North Korea, and I think we all know the difference there. So, with that, Ted, the floor is yours once again.
Thank you very much. What are you doing, helping me? Oh. Well then. Yeah, that's how I saw it, right? Not really. I'm just one guy. This is my story. You saw generally what happened there, and as far as I can see, it was pretty well right. Our A company tried to stop them from coming across the Imjin River. They lost half of the men there and had to retire. They couldn't stop them coming across. As they said, the Chinese were wading across, but they were like sitting ducks. It was easy to shoot them, and they were floating down the river in the hundreds and thousands. So most of the numbers you heard there were from probably from China. General Peng lost 1/3 of his command. He started out, I believe, with 30,000 people, and he lost 10,000 of them in that action. And it didn't do any good, because of the stand of the Gloucesters at that point, it held them up long enough so that, I'm going to go fast forward to 2010. I was at a lunch in Belgium, Wisconsin, with a group of people from the YMCA, and two of them were Army, and one was Army, one was a Marine. And we got to talking, and he said, where did you serve? I said, oh, I was in the British Army. He said, yeah, where did you serve? I said, well, I was in Korea. Who were you with? I said, the Gloucesters. And he let's see. He got up and walked over to me and shook my hand, and he said, I never thought I'd get to meet one of you guys. He said, you saved my ass. And you know, time means everything, and the timing was off. Brody gave the troops, now this is according to Jim, anybody know Jim Horseman? That's who it was, from up there in Belgium. He said that they withdrew from their positions on orders from Brody to pull back, and the Gloucesters was to hold the position until they got back, and that the South Korean army on the other side were to pull back and establish the position in the new line that was to protect, as it were, the South Koreans. If General Peng had waited 24 hours to attack, we were due to pull out too. We would have all moved back. This is a pattern that we followed all the way through in Korea. One of the things about it was that we ran up and down that country so much. I can tell you that only once did I pick up a shovel to have to make anything like a slit trench for me to get into, because they were all there. All you had to do was look. The whole place was riddled with them. So the North Koreans would retreat, and we'd go up. Sometimes it was a little fighting. Most of the times, a lot of the times, we'd just walk up the hill, find those holes that they were in and get in them. And then sooner or later they'd say, well, oh, we're being relieved. And somebody else would come up. Now, on that Imjin River thing, the American troops, you saw them on there mostly. Those English troops you saw on there, we didn't wear helmets. So all the ones that you saw on there were either Chinese or Americans that had a helmet. Okay? So here's the thing. We would just move up and down that country, and it just seemed to us like, what are we doing this for? I'm just, as I said, one guy, but I'm going to tell you how I got to the Gloucesters. My wife's family, my wife's to-be family, decided to emigrate to the United States. When they did that, I didn't believe for 1 minute that I would ever see her again. I figured she'd get to Texas and get a big rich Texan and never turn back. So I did the smart thing to do. I joined the Army for 12 years. And in retrospect, I guess that's what this was all about. I joined the Royal Electrical Mechanical Engineers, and that's that group that's on the screen right there. They look like a likely bunch, don't they? We're all 17, 18, ready to go to war. Those guys have got rifles with bayonets on them, and I don't think any one of them know what the hell they'd do with it if they saw one. As a matter of fact, I know they wouldn't. So I joined the Royal Electrical and Mechanical Engineers, and I was pretty athletic. I used to play soccer all the time when I could. I played tennis. I used to do tumbling and all that. So they asked me if I'd like to be a PE instructor, and that's me, over on the right. The guy in the middle, Joe Haddock, we called him the clown. He worked part-time as a all-in wrestling referee. And that's why we called him the clown, because he was part of the act. The guy down on the bottom was Mickey O'Sullivan. He was a British Army featherweight champion. And I used to help him when we would spar together. And that's another ridiculous thing, because there wasn't any way that I could even stop him from hitting me, and I could never hit him either. So that's what I did for about a year or so. But then I decided I wanted to make more money. The only way you could make more money was to get more rank or go to a specialist group. I tried paratroopers. By that time, all the specialist groups were getting rid of people. They didn't want anybody else. I finally found one that would take me, and that was the artillery group. And that was to train to be an armament artificer. So I learned all about field artillery. I need that water. Thank you. Now this is water, whether you believe it or not. I'm not acting like it, but it sounds like it. Anyway, number 3, 4, and 5. That there is one of the best pieces of equipment anti-tank guns ever built. It's so good that they were installed in both the Centurions and the American Sherman tanks. It had a pretty well flat trajectory for over 1.5 miles, maybe 2. Muzzle velocity was around 4,000 feet per second. I hope that means something to most of you guys. And because of that sliding block that was on there, it was a spring-loaded sliding block. It could be fired just exactly like an automatic machine gun. The difference being that we had to load when they recoiled, and then it recuperated. As it recuperated, these fingers would come up and throw the empty cartridge out, and you put a new one in. You're ready to fire again. And I think they kind of pushed it a little bit. They said you could shoot 20 rounds a minute. I would say more if you're aiming it, 10 rounds a minute. You had a telescopic sight and 2 hand wheels for the shooter. It was an adventure. I just love shooting those things. And I got to shoot some because a lot of the people I was with wanted nothing to do with it. You look through the telescopic sight, had a big rubber eyepiece. You jammed your head into that. You jam your shoulders into this harness, and you've got a trigger down here which consisted of 2 pieces of rod. When you pulled that trigger, you went for a ride. And I'm telling you, that thing just went up like that and back down again. Well, when it came back down again, you better be ready to shove another one up the breech. So that was what that was. And as I said, until it was supplanted by the 84 millimeter that you see on most of the modern ones now, that 75 or 76 millimeter gun was the most, the deadliest anti-tank gun, and it wasn't worth a nickel where we were, because it wasn't tank country. No matter what they say, tanks were left at home. And eventually those guns were left at home, and I was left with nothing to do except be a soldier anymore. But the whole point I'm trying to make is that the best use of those was in a tank. They loved them. They were very, very accurate, as you can tell. But if you look at that, in order to fire that thing, you had to spread out the trail arms, and they've got spades on the end. After 2 or 3 shots in soft ground, the spades would be half buried. So to get the thing back up to where it's not got any elevation on it, you had to get after it with a shovel. So not much good for speed. So anyway, I was 12 weeks at that school, and I came out an expert. And I had a choice to be posted, to get a place to go, to be posted. And I had a choice of 2 places. The Welsh Guards. Now, anybody that knows the Welsh Guards are generally used at Buckingham Palace and places like that. That's their uniform they wear for those occasions. The usual, they are a working regiment. And then the Gloucesters. I said, what about the Gloucesters? Well, they're in Jamaica. In Jamaica? Yeah, that's where I want to go. I want to go to Jamaica, that's where I want to go. So I opted to go to Jamaica. Anyway, I went to the base camp, and the guy picked me up at the station. I said, when we're shipping out? And he said, why, where are we going? I said, back to Jamaica. He said, we just left there. He said, we're not going back again. What made you think we're going to Jamaica? So, yeah, I thought we were going to Jamaica, but we didn't go there. So anyway, I got there, and they'd been issued these anti-tank weapons, and the adjutant sent for me. I went up there, did all this stuff, you know. Said, you're going to go to a training school at Bovington to learn about these anti-tank weapons. He said, so here's your travel vouchers, and you need to report there tomorrow. And so I explained to him, I said, I just got there, I got here from there. I just finished 12 weeks. I know all about those guns. And he said, very nice, thank you very much. Report there tomorrow, here's your travel vouchers. So I go back to the same place that I'd spent all that time, walked in, and this officer asked me, he said, what are you doing here? I said, I got to learn about these guns. He said, you just left. He said, you got your arm up. What else do you want? I said, they just told me I had to come back and learn about them. You know how the Army is, yeah? He said, well, I know how the Army is, but I'll tell you, there's nobody around here, and you're not going to be working on those guns by yourself. What am I going to do with you? And I don't know. He said, how about you get 10 days leave? He said, I'll sign off. When you get back to your unit, you keep your mouth shut, and everything will be okay. So that's what we did. But he said, I can't give you travel vouchers. You're on your own. So that's what I did. Anyway, got back there. Wasn't back there very long, and by this time, my wife-to-be had come back from the States and reclaimed me. We decided to get married. Got leave, got married on June the 24th, 1950. Coincidentally, the North Koreans in the end invaded the South on the 25th. I don't think it had anything to do with my wedding, but it seemed like it had something to do with it. So, I spent most of my honeymoon telling Joan, my wife, look, the United States has got thousands and thousands and thousands of men. That's a little bitty country. I had no idea where the heck it was, but I told her it was a little tiny country. No problem at all. Yep. That. Why would they want to send me? No, I'm not going. Well, I got back to base, and that place had been transformed. A bunch of old men going around there. I'll say old men, they're old enough to be my dad. The reservists been called back, and they were a real bunch. They were in World War II, and they weren't happy. And they made it, everybody know that. We had trucks, tanks, we had all kinds of stuff sticking around there. And I'm looking around there bewildered. I don't know what's going to happen. So basically, that happened. And then between October and November, I'm going to cut this, we left England. And then we did something really peculiar. We stopped at about 5 different places. We had to get dressed up and go downtown and then come back to the ship. What's this all about? Well, the best I ever got was, most of it said mind your own business, but the other part said the UN wants to make it known that we're not sending troops from the homeland, we're just sending garrison troops. I don't think that fooled anybody, but that's what we did. So we got to Busan. On the way to Busan, I stimulated an international problem. Our guns were on the fantail of the ship, and I thought it would be really fun if we would take off the tops and play with them a little bit. These guys had never seen them before. Well, that was in the Suez Canal. And we had been on there less than 5 minutes, and 2 or 3 officers, ship's officers, put those tops back on those guns and get the hell away from them. Said they got an urgent message from the British government. They'd been approached by the Egyptian government that we were fixing to shoot them. And so we had to put those tops back on and had to disappear. We had to get off the deck. And I guess, luckily for Egypt, they didn't say anything about it. Anyway, we got to Busan, and we got on a train, 3 days. We chased all the way up past Pyongyang, and we met the American troops and the South Korean troops on the way down. It was one of those things. It was, we go up there, they go. They take it, they go. And that's exactly what happened down there on the Imjin River. The American troops took those areas that Peng wanted to take, but they were relieved by the Gloucesters. And this is why Jim Horseman said, we left there and you took over. And he appreciated that. One of the things we did when we got to 3 miles, well, I don't know how far we were up there, I really don't know. I know we got off the train in a big university, and we kind of camped in the place for 3 or 4 days, and it was my first experience at standing guard. And I'll tell you something, I'm not afraid, I don't have much fear in me for anything, except one thing. I don't like the dark. The dark, I don't like that at all. I was standing guard, and the guy said just now, he said, if you hear noise in front of you, he said, you say, halt, who goes there? and they'll say friend, and you say friend, come up and be recognized, blah, 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 blah. Everything will be all right. Oh, I got that. So he left, and I got to thinking, what if he didn't say friend? I mean, I'm standing up there, bare naked up there, and saying, halt, who goes there? And he's saying, you know. So I was a nervous wreck, and didn't want to do that. And then later on, we went out on a patrol. It was what they call a listening patrol. You weren't supposed to engage anyone. You're supposed to just go out there. So we walked, I believe, about 10 miles. Didn't see anything. Then we hunkered down, stayed there the next day and into the next night, and then came back. We're coming back. I heard this, halt, who goes there? This guy on the front says, friend. And the one up there says, left. Our guy says, tackle. Let's do this again. Halt, who goes there? He said, friend. The guy says, left. Tackle. And somebody said up there, he said, hey, they changed the password. It's God. So, all right, let's go. No, let's do it right. Halt, who goes there? He says, left. Our guy says, God, I guess. He said, come on, friend. And then he said, how many people have you with you? And he said, 13. And I guess every guy there was wondering, hope he got the right number, because the last guy's going to be in trouble. So anyway, that was our experience. One that wasn't quite so funny was the Argyll and Sutherland Highlanders were taking a hill several weeks before that. And there was supposed to be an airstrike on the hill. Airstrike didn't happen because of low clouds. So the Argyll and Sutherland Highlanders just went up without the airstrike. Airstrike came in the next day. They bombed and napalmed the hill. 65 of them were killed. And that's what we learned to call the fog of war. It's not anybody's fault, although it was somebody's fault. But for the 65 guys that died, they were on our side. So, anyway, number 9 on there is the brain gun carriers. Oh, you could do that number 8 again if you want to. Looking at that, you see how we moved back and forth. Up in the top left-hand corner is the date of how things progressed from what was the original 38th parallel, and then there was the attack from the north. And if you'll see there, it goes on down until the Busan perimeter was reached. And then fought back and went all the way up to the reservoir up there, and that's when the Chinese got in. And it's very probable that General MacArthur was a great guy, but he had elevated himself way, way high. And when the president said, you're not going up there, he said, I'm in charge of the army and we are going up there. I think you could put some little blame on him for what happened after that. That's when the Chinese decided they didn't want any more of that stuff. So if you see how that's happening, okay, let's go to number 9. The brain gun carriers, that's our Jeep. Those things were ubiquitous, as they say. go anywhere. Although once I got into a rice paddy one time, and before I know it, the water was lapping up there about 2 inches below the hull. Luckily, a truck came by from the workshops, and this guy, I don't know who he was, whether he was sergeant major or an officer or whatever, but he looked over there and said, "What are you doing, Captain?" He said, "You're sinking out there." I didn't want to laugh about it, but anyway, he hooked up, pulled me out, and that was a kind of a red-faced deal. You're not supposed to steer your way into a rice paddy, that's for sure. Some of those pictures there, you can see what that is. Look at the 10, 11, and 12, the armaments we had with the Bren guns. That's one right there. Vickers machine gun, that's a World War I picture. And also we had those anti-tank guns and rifles. And the deadliest piece of equipment we had is a rifle, bar none. Anybody ever fire a Bren gun? Hands up. Don't all shout at once. All right. Problem with the Bren gun, it's not really a big problem, but it might be, is that it has a soft recoil. They achieved the soft recoil by putting slots in the barrel, and as the gases go up, it cuts down on the recoil. Only problem was that the Bren gun, when you shoot the Bren gun, it goes forward. And you have to keep going up, because if you don't keep going up, the bipod that it's on will collapse. So you had to keep looking at it, which isn't a bad thing because it was very, very accurate. Rarely used as a machine gun, usually used single shot. I saw very few tanks. I looked at that territory there. If you look at pictures of that area, it's a winding road, narrow. I don't know, I can't get in somebody else's head, but if I was General Peng, I'd take one look at that and say, "Whoa, no, we're not going to go into a blind alley with no way out." So there were no tanks in there, except that our tank people decided that they would go against that advice, took a tank in there with a column right behind them. The tank got disabled and the whole column is sitting there. Couldn't move. And that's why tanks didn't work in that country. So, and it's also why anti-tank guns are not any good unless you're in a stable position. There's a picture there of a disabled Centurion. So sorry about him. Anyway, I was with Support Company. Support, we had all of the heavy arms. We had the Vickers, we had the Vickers, we had spare barrels for both Vickers and Brens, and we had all the ammunition. One thing about the British Army, 303 fits all three of those. We had another gun called a Sten. I believe they said that when they were buying the Sten, they paid $2.29, and that's about what it was worth. Number one, it's the only gun that we had that had an oddball ammunition. So if you don't want to be hauling a lot of ammunition, then you haul 303s, and that's what it was. I didn't know whether you knew that or not. I gave a GI a can of cheese. He wanted cheese, and he gave me a carbine, a little carbine. 30 round carbine. One of the old guys said, "What are you going to do with that thing?" I said, "Well, it's light and it's easy." And he said, "Where are you going to get the ammunition?" I said, "I got 30 rounds in there." He said, "Oh, really? You got 30 rounds? And then what are you going to do?" Well, I guess I'm going to throw the gun away. He said, "Well, why don't you start out by throwing the gun away now?" Yeah, and take something you can shoot with. So that was the end of that story. All right, in the battle, I cannot tell you exactly where I was. I would have to look at that map. You've got a map up there. Is it 20? Where is it? Oh, that's a map of, that's Gloucester Hill.
There you go. Here's the map.
I want the other map. The one about the battle. No. Anyway. There you go. Now, does anyone can plainly see? I know you all understand that map, don't you? If you do, you can come talk to me about it, because I didn't. Hill 235, and I have a pointers here somewhere. There it is. Oh, thank you. Hill 235 is where support was. The Gloucester Hill was over here. So the real name of that should be Solnerie, not... See, the engines are all the way up here.
Mike.
This is where it all happened. These are elevation lines. There was anywhere from 600 to 1,000 and something feet. If you can imagine going up to Holy Hill, that winding road up to Holy Hill, but it being on the flat. Get rid of most of the trees, and you've got that road. You can't see past the next bend. That's why tanks were at a disadvantage. You couldn't, they were no good at all. So that's it. Now that's the 25th of April. Go back to the, no, the other one. The one that looks like that. There you go. Now then, everybody understands what that is, don't we? Right. Don't we? Yeah. They come from all directions. And that was the original one on the 22nd of April through the 25th. All right. Our problem was that they didn't come from that direction. We found them coming from the opposite direction, coming back towards us. They had already passed us and came back. So most of the fighting that we did a lot of it, was shooting at them coming up our hill, and tell you the truth, it wasn't hard. I think we had most of the advantage, and we had the rifles were the most deadly piece of equipment we had. We did throw a few grenades down there early on, then we didn't have any more. The 4.2-inch mortars that were down underneath us, they ran out of ammunition and they withdrew. They got out of there. So as we're looking around, more and more, we didn't have anything to eat, we didn't have any water, we didn't have any ammunition, and it was looking pretty hopeless. And then we got word. Now, don't tell me how, I don't know how we got word. I do know somebody said the boss says to get out of there. There wasn't any heartfelt message or anything like that. It was just do the best you can to get out. So we did. Now the group I was with, there was We started out with 14 of us, and we took off down the hill on the other side, hoping, somebody said we're going south. So as far as I know, I guess we were going south. We hadn't got halfway down the hill when we were surrounded, and we just kept going and they kept going. And they seemed like they were real happy about it. One guy tapped me on the shoulder and kind of grinned. And we're stumbling down this road. So we got down close to the bottom. And we come to a truck of ours. So 2 or 3 of us jumped in the truck. It went about 10 feet. It stopped. Steam coming out of the radiator and everything. We got out and we were kind of milling around, and the Chinese are saying, do this, and we'll whip like this. And if one of them looked threatening, we'd say, you know, and they'd give us this number, and we went on. So we were captured, and we were POWs, and so we were walking in somewhat of a single file, and there was a guy behind us with a machine gun, but he wasn't much of a threat or threaten us. I do remember a couple of planes coming over, but when people say that those planes came over and dropped napalm and strafed, if you look at that road, you would have to pick one place that you were going to do that. Those planes could not have followed that road. So everybody scattered, and I've read somewhere that somebody said, let's make a break for it. I looked around, we were in some trees, and there were no Chinese there. They were gone. And we thought, well, they're going to be looking for us, so we got deeper into the trees as far as we could, and then hid out, but they never did come. So the rest of that day, the rest of that night, until the next day, we walked, and we walked into the headquarters. We had, during that time, we had lots of rumors. You guys know about rumors in the Army? They're sending a relief column to get us out. So all we've got to do is hang on, and they're coming to get us out. Well, we find out later they had no intention of coming. It just couldn't happen. So the funny thing after that was, where's the picture of the me and that guy? No, the guy there. When milling around in the headquarters, the guy came to me and said, officer came to me and said, would you mind going back up there with this gentleman and show him which way you came out there? I said, no, I wouldn't mind. But of course it came down to raining, and that's what I looked like then. And we're kind of miserable. So, yeah, I went back there, and there was nobody there. Coming down the road to us was a couple of photographers. I think they were Canadians. Said, what is the up front? Nothing. How far did you walk? I don't know. Walked up the road, never saw a thing. Okay. So he shot that picture of us, and he told me that it would be on the press tent, and I could go get it when he developed it. And he took a lousy picture for a photographer. Anyway, that was it. So let me see. I want to go on some. I was aimless, had no clothes, No clean clothes, by the way, for a couple of days. And then I went back up the road with, up to Sault Marie with this guy, and you saw the picture there. And then, next thing that happened is that I got sick. And tell you the truth, I don't know what happened after that. I had very, very bad throat. My throat was so sore. I think they put me into an evac hospital, but I woke up in Korea, Japan. I never saw Korea again. So, I want to show you something. I want to show you the picture of that book. A few months ago, a gentleman named Brigadier Martin Fines was the last commanding officer of the Gloucesters. He said he'd come across my name and would I be willing to give him some idea of what went on in those last few days. He died he got out in 1991. He suggested I read this book by Robert O. Hollis. And I went off on the wrong track. I started critiquing the book. Well, this guy, I don't know where he got all these stories from. He must have been listening to people in the NAFI or something. Nothing like that ever happened. No, it couldn't be. So, anyway, then I thought, well, wait a minute. That's not what he asked me to do. He asked me to tell him what happened, and he sent this along as a reference. So I started reading different books to see how it all fell out. Anyway, 2 weeks ago, believe it or not, I saw about the death of one of these Korean veterans. And it said he was very proud to have been shown on the Imjin roll. I never heard of that. So I wrote to, oh, by the way, he's not Brigadier Vines anymore, he's Martin now, and I'm Ted. I said, I never heard of this. Is there any way you can get a hold of it? And it might be of use. And you want to show that up there?
It is.
Look at put it back on again. Look at the B echelon down at the bottom. Warwick, that's me. Go up to the top, 3 down. Who is it? Hollis, the guy that wrote the book. I was with him. Now that's a lesson for you. We were together. Now, he did a lot of things to that book to make it sell. Yeah, okay. I was there with him as his proof right there. That was the name, your initial. Friend of mine, Matthews, found out he died in captivity. Another guy that I knew had been killed with a grenade. But when I got that news, I was on cloud 9. I didn't know where I was. I knew where I was there, but I didn't know where I was. You get what I'm saying? Now, 2 weeks ago, I found out, and I've been in cloud 9 ever since. I'm so happy, I can't tell you. Old Hollis, I don't know, he sold a book, but I'd love to know what he looked like. Never did. So that's about the end of my story, and if there's any questions about any of it.
We'll go into question and answer. Anyone?
Oh, I must have done well.
I don't.
Yeah.
Chad, you have questions here. You have your microphone? You have your mic?
Yeah. I got it. Got a question?
When we had our meeting about a month ago, you told me some of the battle scenes. Describe how much ammo you had when you started, how much was left after the, and tell us a little bit about how you slept there in those trenches, what kind of food you had. For 3 days, describe it.
For we had a three-man trench, and we did sleep. And when you say they came in waves, they came in waves, but there was time in between. Sometimes we felt like they're not coming back, but they did. They obviously regrouped and came back. To your last part of it, how much ammo do we have left?
How much did, when you first went on that hill, how many bullets did you have with that rifle? You said you were out of it after a couple of days. How many did you go into the battle with?
That rifle holds a magazine with 10 rounds in it. I had 10 magazines, and I filled them a couple of 3 times, and I don't miss.
How close?
What?
How close did the enemy get to where you were?
About 50 yards. But we had all the advantage. I thought we had all the advantage because we're looking over there, and I mean they're having to work the way up a hill, and obviously if you're working your way up the hill, it's hard to be shooting. But sometimes they'd stop. They had a burp gun and fire over us. 2 of our guys got killed, and we had several wounded, but they were walking wounded.
Were you able to sleep with all the noise at night? How did you just switch positions with the other men and sleep in a trench, or how did that?
Actually, as I said, sometimes it was like ebb and flow, back and forth, back and forth. Sometimes it'd be so loud, but we've got a bunch of non-veterans here. You know about the noise when you're in a firefight and then it goes quiet? Well, that is about the way it was. We flat out of ammunition, if that's what your question was. We had none.
Okay, so food, you ran out of food.
Ran out of food before that.
Okay, so out of ammo, hardly any sleep, no food. When did you get to the point where you thought, this is the end, I'm done for?
I don't remember. I thought that when I first embarked to go over there, I thought I was going to get killed before I even got to Korea. But after that, I don't remember thinking. I don't think that comes to mind.
The commander, his name was Lieutenant Colonel Carnes or Carney.
Yes.
And he was taken POW. Is that correct? He was a prisoner.
Yes, he surrendered along with the wounded, the medical officer, the chaplain, I think a regimental sergeant major were the ones that stayed with the wounded. We had no medics.
So, when you got back to Britain, before you came to the States, did you have a difficult time of adjusting to civilian life again, or even Army life away from the combat zone? How did that go for you?
No, I started on a path of 75 years of trying to forget. And that's why it took a few weeks or so to get things to slot back in place. And that list up there you saw, that was just like the icing on the cake. That made me feel so good, I can't describe it. But
And say when that was again.
say what?
Say when that was again. When you got that list.
When I got what?
Just say when you got that list again.
Oh,
2 weeks, 3 weeks?
2 weeks ago. Yeah. So it's been several months of evolving and starting to remember. And I can tell you, I think the nightmares are gone. I can pretty well get through with most of this without getting upset. And
Ted, has your family ever heard the testimony that you've given tonight? You have your family and friends. Have you ever fully explained to them what you told
no, I wouldn't tell anybody. You people are the only ones I've ever told this to.
us? Well,
Ever.
this is being recorded, and Jackie, if you would like a copy of this, you need to talk to the people taking the for your posterity. Well, Ted, we're going to ask you for your closing comments in a moment. So get your thoughts together, what you'd like to leave with us. But everybody have a wonderful and safe summer. Because you attend these, and you tell friends that we can do this. We'll be back in September, good Lord willing. And Ted Grove, I want to, raise your hand, Ted. He's the one that introduced Ted Warwick to us. So if you have in your circle of friends, family, that you think would be a good speaker, get a hold of us. That's how we often learn of these stories. So, Ted, you've been a great gentleman. We thank you for your bravery and sharing this with us. It's been a long time since 1951. What closing comments now as we end our evening would you like to share with the rest of us here? What are your final thoughts you want to give to us?
Really, I'm glad to have told you guys about it. I know that most of you Vietnam veterans probably went through the same kind of thing. I know that you probably would rather have had that short barrel thing rather than that big old gun that we had. But because a lot of the stuff that went on in Nam was in the jungle and all, so it's completely different. Completely. So anybody wants to tell a story, if it makes you feel good, if you can get it off your chest, and as I said, I had some terrible dreams, and you can call it PTSD if you wish. My wife, bless her, could watch me, and she knew when to change the subject and to turn the TV off. Because that's it.
Thank you so much, Ted.
Uh-huh.